This is the second time in NBA history that a boycott has happened by the players to put a spotlight on an issue and to raise a conversation. And I just opened up saying this was a successful protest. The entire world is now talking about what happened with Jacob Blake in the world that it is for some of our citizens and the way they grew up. Down there in the bubble, I saw there was marching going on with refs at one point. What is the vibe and the feel down there in the bubble, Shams?
Yeah, I think last night was tense. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about, what's going to happen with the games. Obviously, moving forward, I think the season's been put in peril. But you're right, the refs were marching this morning, and I think it's just a show of solidarity with the players. But at the end of the day, people don't know where this is going to go today. There's a players' meeting here in an hour. The owners also have a call in about an hour. So. Where this goes, I think, will hopefully be determined over the next few hours.
Shams, you were reporting last night a lot of breaking news, as was the Woj. I mean, I think at one point between the two of you, there was 70,000 retweets in just a couple. I mean, last night was very active, obviously, in what's going on, because not only are we in unprecedented times in the world, but now we're in unprecedented times in sports, really, with all this attention and the potential for whatever. And then there was said that there was a meeting last night amongst all the teams, and it was tense, like you mentioned. And the Lakers and Clippers were the only teams that said they didn't want to continue to play. What does that mean? Can you elaborate on that? And is that what that 11 o'clock meeting that's happening today is all about?
I think the 11 o'clock meeting is more of a follow-up, but at the meeting last night, basically the message was, is guys just trying to figure out where they want to take this, right? There were a lot of different opinions thrown around. There was a lot of questioning, some frustration toward the Bucks players for not, telling everyone, basically like blindsiding everyone. Like, why did you guys decide to boycott the game and not give everyone a heads up? At least we could have planned and we could have prepped. So that's where some of the confusion revolved around. But at the end of the day, they threw ideas around. It reminded me a lot of the Kyrie Irving call in June, where you had all these different opinions. It's going to be tough to get everyone on the same page. So that's what you saw. You saw a lot of differing opinions. And, I was told the Lakers and Clippers were the two teams out of all the other teams. They were the only two teams that voted to boycott the remainder of the season. LeBron James exited the meeting early. All the Lakers and Clippers players followed him, and so where this goes, again, we'll see. Those two teams were in the minority. They were the two teams out of I think 12 there that wanted not to play. So, this could have been more of a message sent to the league, the remainder of teams that. If LeBron James, and his team and the Clippers, who were the two powerhouse teams of the Western Conference, don't want to play, how will there be a season?
Well, and it's very interesting because I saw some players, and these are all reports coming out about what players are thinking or saying, because we're not in the meeting, obviously, so we're not 100% sure. Udonis Haslam there said that if LeBron's not playing, does it even matter? Great question there. If LeBron's not playing, what will the NBA do if it is just the Lakers and Clippers and that vote continues here at 11 o'clock? But then there were some players that were like, hey, we sacrificed for the last 40 days to come down here to do this. There's 12 of us left. We have to finish this season. And I feel from reading the reports that some players are going to view this as, hey, we have a massive platform right now. We have the ability to talk into action a lot of things. We should continue this. We've already sacrificed enough coming down here away from our families. We've been locked up. We're like a social experiment at this point. We're down in a bubble down here away from everybody. We have to finish. Was that the large majority of players that were thinking that? Is that kind of the way the conversations were going from what you've heard?
Yeah, the majority of players wanted to play, but overall there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of tense moments, and guys just trying to figure out, where are we going with this? Are we going to be a unified group? Andre Iguodala him and Chris Paul really led this meeting, and Andre Iguodala's, his message was, we need to be together. If we're going to do something, we got to be unified. And when you have this many players in one room in one meeting, it's going to be brutally difficult to get any type of real unification, because there are so many different opinions, so many different voices out there. At the end of the day, these players, there's a lot at stake financially. That was also discussed. If they decide not to play, they're going to lose even more money. And so this will impact collective bargaining agreement talks, a potential lockout, just decade down the line of the NBA. That is the type of impact that sitting the rest of the season would have.
Shams, there's been a lot of talk about the owners and the players just being disappointed in what the owners have done. Do you have any idea? Have you heard anything inside the bubble? What exactly the players are looking for from the owners?
Action. They want owners to take action. But what's their plan? What is the players' demands? Do they have a list of demands? If they do, I haven't heard them yet. So I think putting a plan together, putting a list of demands together, that has yet to be done. But there was a clear desire by several players, including LeBron James, that we want to see owners step up and be more be more vocal, be more involved, take more of an initiative. But again, the NBA and the NBPA partnered and started a $300 million fund to empower Black youth. And so movements like that, the NBA has always been ahead of the curve in terms of social movement. And I think but you have these players like LeBron who are stressing that they want owners to be involved in an even more greater way.
Is the ultimate goal of this for the conversations to be had that we're having right now? That is the ultimate goal of this entire thing, right? Like when the Milwaukee Bucks in George Hill, and they decide after, by the way, there's a couple things that have happened within the Milwaukee Bucks with officers of the law that have gone poorly. So it's very personal for them was the tweet, but is the entire goal obviously for this conversation to happen that we're currently having and for it to be happening across the globe?
No question. I mean, that is the only, that is the one benefit that comes out of the gate, and the two teams sticking up and deciding not to play or voting not to play, that to me has more of a measure and an impact because those are two powerhouse teams in the NBA, the Lakers and the Clippers. They're the minority in this. Most of the other teams, they still want to play, but the fact that you have these two powerhouse teams, it's a stand. It sends a message to the rest of the league, the rest of the players. Patrick Beverley said a couple months ago, if LeBron want to play, we're all playing. And that message still is true today. So it'll be interesting to see where this meeting goes and where the players go from here.
If they don't play and they're not in the bubble and they don't have national TV press conferences available literally every single night, are they not thinking about potentially losing the platform that they currently have to potentially enforce more positive and more change than any? Like, that's my biggest question. It's like, because last night I saw a lot of people saying like Kyrie was right. I was like, okay, I understand Kyrie was right that something will continue to happen that's terrible that we should not have happen in our country or police and brutality. I agree that part. But if they don't boycott a playoff game, the entire world isn't shut down. Last night, the entire internet was shut down. Now, granted, there's a hurricane that was supposed to rival Katrina coming in again. So like T's and P's to everybody down in Louisiana, Texas, everything like that. But other than that, the entire world was talking about what happened. If they're not in that bubble, they're not doing this. That is not the conversation right now. And if they leave, it's like, will that conversation just kind of disappear? Because I just don't know. I think it's counterintuitive to leave the platform you have if you want to enact change with a platform helping. I don't know. That feels very interesting to me.
That's a great point, and that's what several players spoke up in the meeting about, in terms of, guys, I'm told at least one player spoke up and basically was like, listen, if we're going to leave here, what are we doing? What's our plan? Are we just going to go back home and sit around and do nothing about what's going on in the country? So these are all things that I don't feel the players still have a precise answer for. These are things that they want to express themselves. And last night was a lot of raw emotion. That's what I sensed as well. Is you had a lot of players in there very, very emotional. And very much wanting to make a stand. They want to create change. There's no question about it, Pat. The question is, how do you really go about that? What's your plan? Can you really control the uncontrollables? If you really want to dedicate all your time and energy and resources into making change, you might need to step away from it for a decade, 2 decades. Like, how long will the real amount of change really take?
Well, and it's interesting because this is bigger than sports. Obviously, I mean, everybody boycotted a game because of it, but sports are the avenue to potentially make the change that is bigger than sports.